I want to bring in NBC's Vaughn Hilliard and MSNBC legal correspondent Lisa Rubin, who has been watching all this unfold inside the overflow room at the courthouse. As you listen to that, tell us what is likely from Judge Juan Merchan. I mean, look, people said $9,000 is like 90 cents to you and me. Nevertheless, he dangled the possibility of jail. What's going to happen, though, tomorrow?
Well, remember, last night's order was issued after Trump made all of the statements you just showed on April 22nd or after. You can't say that it gives him fair warning with respect to the 4 statements that are at issue for tomorrow's hearing. So,
meaning fair warning that he could go to jail.
Correct. And so I don't think that jail is on the menu for tomorrow. I think it's really more of a third time's a charm / 3 strikes and you're out sort of warning. But the other thing, Chris, that I want to underscore is that Juan Merchan makes a point in the gag order of reminding people reading it that his hands are tied. The New York criminal contempt statute gives him 2 options: $1,000 per violation at a maximum, or up to 30 days in jail. There is no in between. And there's a whole paragraph in his gag order where he says it would be preferable if I could impose a harsher penalty on this contemnor because it would matter to him. It's not lost on him that $1,000 is nothing to Donald Trump. And yet, short of jail time, he knows there won't be any real meaningful consequences. So let's see what happens if there is a sort of 4th tranche of alleged violations.
What are you hearing, Vaughn, from inside Trump world about this possibility, whether it's tomorrow or at some future time, assuming he continues to violate the gag order? Are they worried? Is he worried?
I was just sent some speech excerpts for his first campaign stop in about 90 minutes from now, and there's not a single mention of the trial. Those are just the excerpts. Of course, Donald Trump should be expected to bring it up. It's at the forefront of his mind.
Every once in a while, he veers off script.
This is going to be his first campaign rally since the beginning of this trial here. So there's a lot of, I'm sure, pent-up energy and thoughts that he has. At the same time, you know, when he does those hallway remarks, it's not like he's coming out there and completely violating the gag order with a giant middle finger saying, I'm doing it regardless of what you're saying here. And so we know from Donald Trump here, the fact is that just last fall, right, he was fined for repeatedly attacking the principal law clerk to Judge Engoron, despite having the gag order against him. He's now been fined in this situation here as well. The question is, does Donald Trump begin to actually fear of potential consequences, as Lisa just outlined, a potential 3rd strike type of a situation?
It's part of covering a trial that you're trying to read the tea leaves, but we're also trying to read the political tea leaves. Right. I thought it was interesting, Vaughn, that for the first time yesterday, Donald Trump had an entourage, which included his son, Eric, but also Ken Paxton. He's the Texas Attorney General. He's had some controversies previously, let's call them that. Could this be, it's only one, but could this be the start of, I'm going to show up for Donald Trump. I will be there sitting in the gallery for him. If it turns out that I'm being considered for vice president or for a job in the administration, so be it.
He was all but alone for the first 2 weeks of his trial.
Yeah.
There were no family members. There were no allies. You know, I was wondering along the way, were you going to see a Doug Burgum or a Tim Scott or a Kristi Noem? You know, members of Congress, you know, the Marjorie Taylor Greens, they were tied up with obligations up on Capitol Hill the last 2 weeks. We didn't see any of them there. And so that's why yesterday, Ken Paxton, but also David McIntosh, who is the president of the Club for Growth, he and Donald Trump had an icy relationship over the course of the last 2 years. Club for Growth was actively looking for an alternative to Donald Trump. They had hosted a donor retreat to go and try to prop up some of those folks like Tim Scott and Doug Burgum and other Republican candidates. And he was there at the courthouse yesterday. So this could be an opportunity for Republicans, including those that had previous icy relationships with him, to come to his defense where he is at the courtroom for anywhere from eight hours a day.
Keith Davidson's going to be back on the stand tomorrow. He was the lawyer who brokered the deal for Stormy Daniels and Karen McDougal. He made a comment that might have felt a little bit like deja vu to the jury, and I want to talk about that. About the hush money payment to Stormy Daniels, he said, quote, Michael Cohen didn't have the authority to actually spend money. My understanding was that Mr. Trump was the beneficiary of this contract. It was just last week that the ex-publisher of the National Enquirer, David Pecker, was on the stand and told the jury basically the same thing. He didn't think that Michael Cohen had any authorization to buy or acquire or spend any monies without Mr. Trump's approval. Two witnesses, practically the same answer. If you're the defense, what do you do with that?
Well, there are a couple of ways that you can go. One way is just to say Cohen was freelancing. He was trying to impress the boss. He had no permission to do it. He certainly had no authorization to do it. And he cut the deal on his own without Donald Trump's knowledge or permission. But that doesn't seem to be the strategy that they're using, particularly if you look back at their cross-examination of David Pecker. It looks like the strategy they're employing here, particularly given some of the other evidence that hasn't come into the trial yet, is not he didn't do it or it wasn't for his benefit, but so what? There's nothing wrong with that. And that's the sort of standard operating procedure line of cross-examination that we saw Trump lawyer Emil Bovee take David Pecker through. Mr. Bovee is also going to cross-examine Keith Davidson. You can tell that based on where he's sitting at the defense table. I'm going to look forward to seeing how they thread that needle tomorrow.
Lisa Rubin, Vaughn Hilliard, also Mr. and Mrs. Superman, because both of you have been just, I don't know, no sleep, but I appreciate both of you very much.